Hey everyone! Today we're diving deep into one of the most critical and yet completely invisible pieces of engineering in pretty much every tall building you've ever set foot in. We're talking about the unseen architecture that's always on standby, ready to keep you safe. So let's just jump right in with a really important question.
So let me ask you something. When you picture a fire in a building, what's the first thing that comes to mind as the biggest threat to the people inside? What's the real danger?
You're probably thinking flames, right? Well, it turns out that's not it. Decades of research, data from real fires, it all points to one thing. The number one culprit, overwhelmingly, is the smoke. So, to really appreciate the genius solutions engineers have come up with, we first have to get a handle on the problem itself. We need to dig into why smoke is considered the real killer, why it's the main focus of all this work. And that brings us to this key concept in fire engineering. It's a word you might not have heard: tenability. Now, what does that mean? Well, think of it this way. The goal isn't just putting out the fire. It's about maintaining a survivable environment for people, creating like a safe bubble of breathable air that gives everyone the time they need to get out safely. Yeah, and smoke isn't just one single danger. It's really a triple threat. First, you've got obscuration, and that's just a fancy way of saying it gets so thick you literally can't see the exit signs, or easing your own hand in front of your face. Second, it's toxic. It's a poisonous soup of gases, especially carbon monoxide, that can knock you out in just a few breaths. And finally, there's the heat. Smoke carries extreme heat way beyond the actual fire, making entire floors totally unsurvivable. Okay, so we've established smoke is incredibly deadly, but what makes it so tough to deal with in a big building is the way it moves. And it's not random at all, it's just following some basic predictable laws of physics. So in the winter, a tall building acts just like a giant chimney. You've got warm air inside that wants to rise, and as it does, it creates this suction that pulls cold air in from the bottom. If a fire starts on a lower floor, that stack effect will just suck all that deadly smoke right up through stairwells and elevator shafts, spreading it to every single floor above. But here's the kicker. In the summer, the complete opposite happens. The building's full of cool, heavy air conditioning. That air wants to sink, and it pushes smoke from a fire on an upper floor downwards, filling up the escape routes below. So you see the challenge, right? It's a problem that literally flips itself upside down depending on the season, and engineers have to design for both. All right, so we've got the physics of smoke down, but what about the other major factor in any emergency? The people. Movies love to show these mindless crowds stampeding for the doors, but it turns out research into how people actually behave in fires tells a very, very different story. I mean, listen to this quote from a leading disaster researcher, E.L. Quarantelli. He says there's very little evidence that people under stress act any more illogically than they do in everyday life. The whole idea of mass irrational panic, it's pretty much a myth. People get scared, for sure, but they don't stop thinking. So instead of chaos, evacuations usually follow a surprisingly logical pattern. First, people become aware there's a problem. Then, and this is the key part, they prepare. They might go look for the source of the alarm, they might warn a colleague, maybe they grab their keys. And only then do they start moving to an exit. And knowing that people follow these steps is absolutely critical for designing systems that actually work for them. So how do you fight an enemy like smoke, which behaves in these complex ways, while also accounting for how real people behave? Well, you don't build more physical walls. You build invisible walls. Walls made entirely out of air. And the main technique they use is called pressurization. And the concept is actually pretty simple. You use massive fans to pump fresh, clean air from outside into critical escape paths, like stairwells. This makes the air pressure in that space just a tiny bit higher than the areas around it. You wouldn't even feel it, but it's enough to do something incredible. This slide just shows it perfectly. Look at the left. When the pressure is equal, smoke just pours right into the stairwell as soon as a door opens. It has nowhere else to go. But now look at the right. With pressurization, that higher pressure inside the stairwell is always pushing outwards. So when someone opens that door, clean air rushes out, creating an invisible barrier that literally stops the smoke in its tracks. Now, this isn't just a cool science experiment. These systems are real, and they're built into the very fabric of the buildings we use every day. So let's look at how these ideas are actually put into practice to create safe havens when things go wrong. I want to show you a number: 30 pounds force, 30 lbf. What on earth could that possibly have to do with fighting smoke in a fire? That is the maximum amount of force allowed to open an escape door. And why is that specific number so important? Well, think about it. If you pressurize the stairwell too much, all that air pushing against the door can make it physically impossible for a child or an elderly person or someone with a disability to open it and get to safety. It's the perfect example of how this engineering has to balance pure physics with very human limitations. So really, the whole point is to turn stairwells into sanctuaries. The entire system, all the fans, the sensors, the vents, it's all designed with just one goal: to create a safe, smoke-free column of air that runs right through the building. A protected path for everyone to get out, no matter which way the smoke wants to go or what the weather's doing outside. But, even the experts don't have all the answers. There's a really interesting debate in the field right now about exactly when these systems should kick on. Should they activate automatically the instant a smoke detector goes off? That's super fast, but what if it's just someone burning toast? Or should they only be activated manually by firefighters when they get there? That's more reliable, but it could cost precious, precious minutes. So the next time you're in a high-rise and you walk past one of those stairwell doors, just take a second. You can't see the fans, you can't feel the pressure, but now you know. You know there is this incredible, complex, invisible architecture of air, silently waiting, ready to create a path to safety. Kind of makes you look at a simple building in a whole new light, doesn't it?